a step-by-step process, and that's exactly what the House is undertaking. There are at least 4 bills right now that are working their way through the Judiciary Committee, dealing with everything from an E-Verify system that can actually work and be used by employers around this country to know that they are hiring somebody who is eligible, legally eligible for employment in this country. But we also have the opportunity to address one of the other concerns that I hear at town meetings and in private conversations at grocery stores across my district. And that's so many people who say, you know what, do we really need to do anything other than just enforce existing laws? Do we really need new laws? Do we need anything? And you know, the question that we have to give serious consideration to that question, because the answer is yes, we do need immigration reform. Because of the 11 million people in this country that we believe are undocumented today, 42% of them are here who came legally, but entered into the country legally, but overstayed their visas. So how do we reform the visa system to actually make it work so that we know the process, the integrity of the process is what it needs to be? How do we create a system for those in agriculture to know that they have a workforce that is going to be readily able to and available to harvest that fall's crops? Or if you're a dairy farmer, there's no one season for a dairy, but it's year-round. And so the availability of a workforce with the skills that they need, but the certainty that they need. And it's those laws that we have to reform to enforce and rebuild the trust of the American people in a step-by-step process. Because if we do this, we can actually create a system of laws that avoids the mistakes of the 1986 law through enforcement first, border security first, and making sure then that we deal with the situation at hand of the people who do want to be a part of a healthy American economy.
Well, I appreciate my colleague pointing out some of the legislation that the Judiciary Committee has already passed, because I think it's important to understand that the House of Representatives is taking a different approach when it comes to immigration reform. And so we've passed the Border Security Results Act out of Homeland Security that I mentioned earlier. We have also passed the Legal Workforce Act, which is the bill that reforms the E-Verify system. It gives us a much more workable E-Verify program that gives our employers the certainty and the assurance that they can verify the citizenship of potential employees. The second piece of legislation that came out of Judiciary Committee already is the Skills Visa Act. This has to do with what's called H-1B visas. These are for your high-skilled workers. These are for folks in science and math and technology who may come to the United States to go to university and learn these skills and learn and get on this career path, but then they don't have a visa to stay here. You know, most industrialized nations in the world, 80% of the visas they give out are based on work skills and needs of the workforce. Here in the United States, it's about 12% of the visas we give out. We have a lottery to give out visas, and to me that is ridiculous. We have to reform this system so that we're giving out visas to the type of people we want to attract to this country. And so the Skills Visa Act is a piece of legislation that we're considering here in the House that will do that. The third piece of legislation is called the SAFE Act. You know, one of the issues we talked about is we've got to enforce the rule of law. And frankly, we don't have enough federal agents enforcing the law. And so what we need to do is empower states and municipalities, local governments that want to enforce the immigration law to be able to do that. And so that's what the SAFE Act does. And then the fourth piece is the Agriculture Guest Worker Ag Act. And as my colleague mentioned, that is a critical piece for our economy. You know, there are at least 11 million undocumented workers here in this country that we know of. Many of those folks don't want citizenship. What they want is the ability to work here legally. And if we have an ag worker program that actually works, this is the H-2A program. And frankly, when I'm home, I go home every weekend and meet with our local folks, and I see farmers across my district. I ask them, how many of you are using the H-2A program? And you'd be amazed at how few people actually use the program because it's not workable. And so, as my colleague from Colorado asked the question that he hears in town hall meetings, do we really need to do any reform to immigration? Yes, we do, because we can't just secure the border with a fence and with technology if we still have that attraction, that need for illegal workers to fill jobs in this country. We've got to have a pathway to bring in legal workers, whether it's in agriculture or home building or some of the more high-skilled types of jobs. We need a legal pathway to fill those positions. Otherwise, there's going to be this tug of illegals that's going to continue to happen. And so we could build a 10-foot wall, but someone's going to invent an 11-foot ladder. And so it's all got to be a comprehensive approach. That's why it's so important that we have that agriculture guest worker program as well. And so as you can see, we in the House are looking at this step by step. We're looking at what are the actual problems so that we can address them in a very thoughtful way, so that we aren't just rushing to get a big bill, as was once said by a former Speaker of this House, let's pass this bill so we know what's in it. Well, we don't want to make that mistake again. We don't need a big, huge, comprehensive bill. We need to look at these issues in a very thoughtful, comprehensive way. And I'll yield back to one of my colleagues.
I appreciate the gentleman from North Carolina yielding. And you look around at immigrants who come to America. Why do they come? They've come for the American dream. They've come for a better life for themselves. They've come for a better life for their children. They've come to the land of opportunity because they want that opportunity. They want to work hard. I'm from Wisconsin. Many people may not want to recognize this, but if you look at our dairy farms around Wisconsin, there's a lot of immigrants who have come here without documentation that work on our farms. And it's hard, tough work, and they do it because they want an opportunity. And I know that I travel around and I do a lot of town halls, and I know my colleagues do town halls and coffees. And I guess I would ask the gentleman from Colorado and Illinois what you guys hear in your town halls of what people think about immigration, the problems and the solutions that you face in your communities.
Well, I think, gentleman from Wisconsin, you know, it's the conversations I hear are from all angles, whether it's somebody whose family came here when they were very young. A particular instance of a young woman who came into this country with her family when she was a baby. And she has gone to school in the same class, same kids, same grade, same school system for 12 years, eventually graduating as a senior #1 in her class. And she was brought here as a child, and when she asked me about what we were going to do, I said, your situation is an example of why we need immigration reform, so that we can actually have secure borders and that we can actually know the laws are being enforced, and to avoid putting you in this situation. And years later, that conversation is repeating. We don't have the reform yet, and we're still looking for that reform. And how many years have to go by before we can actually say we have secured the border, we are enforcing the law, and we know that in 10, 20, 30 years the visa program is solved, the E-Verify system is working, that labor needs, whether it's housing, construction, agriculture, are being met in a system that actually encourages compliance with the law as part of a healthy American economy, instead of an underground or a way that does it in a law-breaking fashion. And so these are our opportunities to have. And I'll tell you one other story. There was a doctor in the eastern plains of Colorado who was here with all of his proper documentation. Unfortunately, his mother was ill and he needed to leave the country, or was hoping to leave the country, to say goodbye to her. But under our system of laws, if he left this nation, he couldn't come back. The only doctor in the county couldn't go away and say goodbye to his mom because he couldn't return. We need some common sense.
That's a powerful story. And the gentleman from Illinois.